Earl. Mitchell is Chief Operating Officer of Praxis, a business apprenticeship program for young adults who want more than college. He's the author of Don't Do Stuff You Hate and the host of the Self-Directed podcast. Mitchell regularly writes education, career, and money advice for young adults just getting started. The title of Mitchell's speech is Life After High School, What Comes Next, and How Can I Make the Strongest Start Possible? I'd love it if you'd all join me in welcoming Mitchell Earl. Mitchell?
Awesome. Thanks, Chris. And I just want to double check here. I'm getting a note here that we may have cut out here.
I can see you.
Sure. Awesome. Everything going well. So anyway, thanks, ladies and gentlemen. Glad to be here. Glad to have an opportunity to talk more with you this evening. Like Chris said, Chief Operating Officer of Business Apprenticeship called Praxis. We'll talk a little bit more about that. But the core of today's topic, life after high school. If you're parents of young adults right now who are entering this era, or if you're a young adult tuning in, the big question is what comes next? How can you make the strongest start possible? So over the better part of the past decade, we have worked with young adults all over the country, hundreds of them, to help them launch meaningful careers, go out in that first leg of their journey and discover how to advance forward, how to build foundational skills, how to find their thing, how to achieve financial independence through our apprenticeship program. So this is something that we are in the thick of day in and day out, and we've learned a ton over that time period working with a lot of different people with unique scenarios. So I'm going to share some of our findings from that today. There's a huge problem, especially, if you're a parent who has a young adult who's on the cusp of graduating, probably over the past, year or two, you've encountered this problem, is that even if it's not your son or daughter, likely friends, sons or daughters, there's probably some young adult in your life that you can think of who doesn't know what he or she wants to do, let alone what is possible out in the real world. That is a very common problem today, and it's a growing problem. Unfortunately, the way that most young adults go about that, solving that problem, they turn to student debt while they attempt to solve that problem. Often, in many cases, mounting 5 to 6 figures of student debt before they've made serious ground in their careers, before they've had that real first pivotal experience. To give you kind of another take here on common statistics of the way most people solve that problem, defaulting to the college path. Here's some of the bleak statistics about college outcomes from recent polls here. 58% of students claim that the reason they go to college is to access better jobs. But on the other side of the market, we're seeing a different story altogether. 75% of the total labor market allegedly does not require a bachelor's degree at all. Yet most students are claiming those are the jobs that they're going to. That's the reason why they're going to school. On average, students walking out of school with just under $40,000 of student debt, in many cases taking 6 years to graduate, but the graduation numbers overall are bleak. I don't have that statistic here, but one statistic that is startling, 43% of college graduates actually underemployed in their first jobs out of college. So they're exiting college. They're not actually getting the jobs that they hoped college would enable them to get. These outcomes are not representative of the story that most of us are told about college, that it is the end-all, be-all path to a better life, to 1 million additional dollars of earnings over the lifetime of our career. Young adults today are not seeing the same types of earning premiums. The fact of the matter is, the tried and true route of college is not working for many young adults at solving that first big problem that we talked about, figuring out what they want to do and making a strong start. So is there a better way? You're probably familiar with trade school as the common popular alternative. If you're not going to go to high school, there's trade school. There's entering the job market right away with whatever type of hourly wage jobs that you can access today. But the truth of the matter is there are plenty of other options. Not just the apprenticeship program that we run at Praxis, but aside from talking about specific programs, I want to talk about some of the intangibles, the important sort of milestones that we have found working with young adults as they are trying to solve that problem and that hurdle in their own lives of figuring out what they want to do, figuring out what's possible and making the strongest start into that next step. We've got a limited amount of time, so I'm going to tell you two stories. First and foremost, I want to start with my story. I was your typical high achiever, straight A's, valedictorian, great test scores, choice of colleges, and full ride offers. Knew from a very young age that I wanted to be a pediatric neurosurgeon. Very outlandish, wild, prestigious sounding goal that was going to take me all the way through kind of the elite circles of academia. Except when I got into college, it was the first time where I had sort of that identity crisis. I felt like I spent so much time trying to play the game and play the game well, but spent very little amount of time trying to figure out what it was that actually made me come alive, figuring out how to explore the options that were available to me. At the same time, I got involved with a very early stage startup. I started getting a ton of that experience out in the real world, and sort of everything changed for me. To give you kind of a snapshot of what my early career and working life looked like as I sort of stumbled through this process because I didn't have a good template. This is sort of all of my jobs out of college and right at the start of my early career. And the blue line sort of shows you me finding my thing, me starting to find my thing. It was this wild, twisty, turvy, 2 steps forward, 10 steps back, very messy, nonlinear process. And over that period of time, and also through the work that we've done at Praxis, it's taught me, and through working with hundreds of young adults who are going through a similar process of trying to find their way forward, brings me to sort of the first big milestone that I would recommend as parents talking about with your young adult, or if you're a young adult, like thinking about taking on this mindset as you enter the real world, and recognizing that you don't have to have it all figured out now. There is a myth that there is one perfect job for you to do for the rest of your life. Truth of the matter is, your career and life, it's a discovery process as you identify new information, as you gain more experience, as you encounter different obstacles and different setbacks and different opportunities, and meet different people and make new connections. It is a messy, nonlinear process that is going to open up all sorts of different opportunities to you. But at this earliest phase in your journey, recognizing that you don't have to have it all figured out. And 2, that the best thing you can do right now is go out and get those reps. Conduct your experiment in the real world. Allow yourself to have this sort of iterative process where you are trying different things, trying to figure out the things that interest you. This cross section of the things that interest you, the things you're good at, the things that other people value, as you explore what's possible. In order to do that and do it effectively, first you have to get started, though. Whether you choose to go to college or trade school or enter the workforce or pursue other programs, first you have to get started. And one of the best pieces of advice that I can give you today, having not only worked with a lot of young people trying to figure out what to do, but also having hired tons of people and worked with tons of recruiters and business owners across the country as they've tried to staff their teams, is that they're looking for experience on that side. If you want to continue to open up additional opportunities for yourself in the future, do the things now that are going to continue to transfer and allow you to take the momentum that you're building now and carry you forward. And so in order to do that, you've got to go out and get that experience. It's not enough to just sit in the classroom. Similarly, it's not enough just to go work the jobs. You also should be getting experience that's valuable, not only work experience, but experience, both work and life experience that allows you to gain clarity about the things you're good at, the things other people value, the things that you enjoy doing. So focus on getting clarity first, conducting those experiments out in the real world, and learning about what it is you like, what it is you absolutely don't want to do professionally as well. Like I said, it's this continuous process of exploring your interest out in the real world. The best way to go about that is sort of this approach of rapid experimentation. Maybe that means trying different jobs, or attempting to shadow different people, or pursuing different interests by reading books, listening to podcasts, getting in touch with people that are working on projects that excite you. But also the next 2 steps are critical as well. Validation and elimination. So as you sort of get out into the real world, you try stuff, you're going to identify things you like. pursue those further. When you come across something that you don't like, cross that off the list and move on. It's okay to mess up. It's okay to change your mind, especially early on in your career, but do that as quickly as possible. Don't change jobs before you get the lesson and gain some useful experience. But it's okay to change your mind. It's okay to pivot. You've got to sort of narrow the playing field of options that really excite you. And another point here, as you're going through sort of those early career experiences, early experiences right out of high school, whether that's, like I said, college or jobs or, going to trade school, it's not enough just to get the experience. Also focus on building useful and transferable skills. If you're on it in the job as an 18, 20 something year old, one good way to focus on doing this in the current arenas that you can access today is like take on additional opportunities. Strive to be the best employee, not just to get brown, not just to brown nose, but as a way of being valuable to other people and as a way of expanding your human capital and expanding the opportunities that are available to you. So, even if you're bagging groceries, like be the person who is every person who's checking wants you to be at their station bagging groceries because customers are happy. You engage with people. You know where everything in the grocery store is. Like those simple little things like that and the experiences you can access today, those will allow you to build useful and transferable experience that ultimately transfers as you go out into the job market later on. That forward momentum will carry you. Second, aside from my story and some of those points here, I want to tell you another story about Nick. Nick's a young adult who, coming out of high school, he knew he didn't want to go to college. He had some experience working at McDonald's, was promoted through the ranks, great employee, hustled, knew even from that early career experience, I want to do something else. I don't know what's possible. I don't really have a good idea of how to go access different opportunities. Took a job working in construction instead of going to college. And then ultimately found his way through an apprenticeship to go learn sales. Today, Nick's got an awesome job. He's works at an awesome growing company. He's the leader of a team. He's making great money. Just bought his first house. He's 21. He took a wildly different path than the average young adult who defaults to college while they're trying to figure out. Nick did all of that without student debt, as another big point that I want to drive home. And Nick's not alone. Nick's story is representative of hundreds, if not thousands, of young adults who've gone and taken a slightly different route by focusing on those useful and transferable skills, by finding mentors that they can learn from, by developing financial literacy. And what I mean by that, by avoiding things that take you out of the game, like racking up 5 to 6 figures of student debt while you were exploring what it is you want to do professionally. Another key to Nick's story and the story of, stories like Nick's of young adults who've gone and taken this alternative route to traditional colleges, finding somebody who's already done what it is you're interested in doing, putting yourself in proximity to them so you can learn from them quickly. You can accelerate in those early steps of your career. Plus, you have somebody who can pave the way for you. Not only can they be somebody who can act as a mentor, but they can invest in your personal and professional growth as well. Maybe this is a business owner that or is a family friend, or it's somebody who is already in the profession that you're interested in. Find a way to go shadow that person. Find a way to offer value to them, whether that's shadowing them or offering to work for free. Find a way to go and solve problems for that person. So that they're sort of incentivized to invest in you, but also so you can access that opportunity to learn, gain more context about this path you're interested in, as a way of validating if that's something you want to invest more time and energy in pursuing as a career, or figuring out, hey, this isn't something I want to do. I can cross this experiment off the list. I can move on to the next thing. Ultimately, the best tip I can give you as far as it relates to taking this first step out of high school is to get out of their classroom and into the real world, regardless of what you choose to do next, whether your journey takes you through college or through trade school or through some other program or directly into the workforce. It's not enough just to get the book knowledge. You've got to go out and get that real world work experience. If you can do that while Also, being smart with your money, even if you don't have to be a financial guru or anything like that, but avoid the devastating blows like racking up tons of debt or getting into credit card debt. Like, be smart with your money. Find people that can invest in your personal and professional development. Focus on building those new skills. Move away from home and become financially independent if you can. All of these very tangible steps as you go and take this first step out in the real world is going to set you up for success, not only because of the value of those things in and of themselves, but the value of the journey that it's going to require of you as you move away from home. You go and get those early career experiences. You're going to learn things about yourself, about the world around you, gain more context for what is possible, and have a larger data set to work with as you try to answer that question. What is it I want to do? What do people value? What do I enjoy doing? So I know that is a lot of information quickly, but I wanted to definitely be sure to leave plenty of time here for questions since we've got a limited amount of time. So happy to open it up here. If you have questions, drop them in the chat or use the Q&A function, and we can talk a little bit more now. So.
Perfect. Mitchell, thank you very much. Yeah, just as Mitchell was saying, if you don't mind, just post a question in the chat. And I see something here from Jessica. She says, completely agree. So hard to teach this entitled generation taught by the school system that they're owed something. Any ideas? Jessica, do you maybe clarify what you mean by any ideas? Or Mitchell, do you have a sense of what she's asking?
I mean, Jessica, if you have any other context, drop it in here. But kind of my takeaway from that is like, you know what, having worked with a lot of young adults, kind of across, the whole variety of different backgrounds, like I understand, young adults coming out of high school, in particular, young adults who've been told, hey, play the game. Here's how the game works. If you do these things, you jump through these hoops, everything's going to work out. It's all going to pay out. And I can tell you, a lot of young adults coming out of high school right now, they've seen the way their older siblings or their parents, the hand that they were dealt when it comes to student debt. They've seen older siblings follow all the rules and play the games and it not work out. And so they feel like they've been dealt a bad hand. And they expect more than the situation that they've been given in. One thing that I would say universally is valuable is going and getting that early work experience. The earlier and faster that someone can go out and start participating in the mutual exchange of value, the better, in my experience, working with younger people. There's something about that process of going and one, realizing how hard work is in the first place, seeing how much is taken out of your paycheck after taxes, but also more importantly, like being in service to other people and figuring out how to be valuable and realizing, hey, like I can trade my time for money, or I can figure out how to move up the value hierarchy and figure out how to be even more valuable to people. That unlocks people's creative capacities and sort of shifts that mindset from entitlement to how can I be of service to other people? How can I be valuable?
That's great. Next, so that you nailed it. Jessica came back and clarified how to direct them, how to direct them to teach them not to be entitled and driven. And Elizabeth asks, do any people do praxis and community college at the same time?
Yeah, great question, Elizabeth. So we have seen really over the past couple of years in particular, a big uptick of young adults who were like doing dual enrollment coming out of high school. They have, maybe 6 months, and then they can walk out with an associate's degree, and then they plug right into our program as sort of like, I don't want to go finish a 4-year degree. I especially don't want to go to a more expensive school, but I feel like I still need that next level of career development and sort of practical skill education. That's been a great success for the people who are taking that route. Definitely possible to do. I mean, community college isn't quite as much of a time commitment. Definitely possible to juggle both. I don't usually recommend it unless the timeline sort of works out where you are able to enter a full-time job. People coming out of our program are starting full-time jobs month 7 of our year-long program. So it's kind of like we want to make sure that they have the opportunity to go hit the ground running from day one when they're hired full-time versus like trying to juggle, our program, college, learning the ropes at a new business. And also like, especially if they're just coming out of high school, that's a ton at ton of new things all at once. And so we want to set them up for success.
Fantastic. And Lacey asks, what do you think the three most important things to teach children are? So she's pulling you back down the age spectrum a little bit and saying, I want to set my children up to the point where you're talking to them as teenagers and a little older. What about the younger ones?
Yeah. So, I want to preface that my answer is somewhat of like, I work mostly with young adults. So, what are the things that when they're 18, you want to hope these values are instilled in them because it's going to set them up for success. And one of those is intellectual curiosity. I would say that is sort of the foundational thing that I see is this idea of like how to pursue your interests, especially compared to the average person coming out of 12 to 20, plus years of compulsory schooling. Like the idea that you can go learn anything on your want just because you like to learn and a love for learning. That is foundational and sort of like opening up so many other opportunities. Two is work ethic, just genuine. You don't have to, I guess, love manual labor, but a desire to go hustle and work hard and sort of an aversion to not wanting to work. If you have intellectual curiosity and you have work ethic, like you're going to have so many cool opportunities open up to you. I don't know if I have a third one that's jumping out, but those two I think are the most important by a high margin.
Yeah, that brings up a follow-up question for me is what things could you do that sort of naturally sort of draw children towards exploring that idea of work ethic? Because if we're talking about choosing your own destiny here, is it just, curious.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So, parents that I know, again, I get to deal with young adults. So oftentimes I get to hear stories of like, what was your childhood like? What were your teenage years like? I know that, parents who have done really good teaching their kids about money. And even if it's things like, hey, here are the chores and the things that are expected of you, you don't just get an allowance, but like, here are sort of, how you pull your weight. That's a good thing. Also just being a good example. A lot of the young adults that I know who are the hardest workers, like they had great role models. Their parents or their siblings were also doing those things, and they were talking about work. They had a positive attitude when they shared about their experiences. They weren't coming home and saying like, I hate work, I hate my job. And so that's kind of another carryover point here is like the better of a template you can offer to young adults, the more likely they are to carry that with them as they go and enter this next phase, even if you don't have it all figured out. None of us do. So recognize that there's a margin for error that we're all gonna operate in. But those are some pointers off the cuff.
Fantastic. Another question for me now is, you haven't paid me to say this or anything, but tell me a bit more about Praxis, because I think people, you've been really kind of enticed me here to want to know, what does Praxis do? What does it cost? Financing options, all those things. What's the trade-off, the risk reward? We kind of see how expensive college is. We see how students are underpaid. And now you want to put this aside next to what Praxis does.
Yeah, for sure. So Praxis is a year-long apprenticeship. We are hyper-focused on business. So everything from sales, marketing, customer support to business operations. Our goal is to help people gain better context for how business works while also equipping them with foundational professional skills. So think of like the things that you need to be an effective professional regardless of any specific industry, while helping them explore different career paths until they find one or two skill areas that seem like really strong starting points. The goal isn't, hey, we're gonna tell you what to do for the rest of your life. It's let us help you find something that is a really strong starting point and then build the skills you need. So foundational professional skills, then those deeper skills around an area of interest. This all happens within the first 6 months. The goal is to come out of those first 6 months with a full-time job in that career area of interest, but not just have the job, that you actually have some skills so you can go in and be valuable from day one. The majority of our apprentices, they're starting new full-time jobs at fast-growing businesses where they're working on real projects. They're not interns, they're full-time employees. Our team continues to work with them for their first 6 months on the job, giving them extra guidance and support as they make that transition. So, it's a fast program, but they are put, kind of thrown into the fire quickly, given the opportunity to learn quickly, develop quickly. Our program, sort of the nuts and bolts of it, is $12,000. We guarantee full-time employment. We guarantee minimum starting income of at least $30,000. If we can't deliver on those, the program is free. So compared to college, we've tried to design a program that is very focused on delivering awesome outcomes.
Fantastic. And what was I going to ask? If anybody else wants to jump in on a question, please go ahead.
Thanks, Jessica.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
We'll click here.
What would you?
Any other question? Go ahead.
Yeah, my other question was, what's the kind of satisfaction rate for Praxis students? Like you said, money back guarantee is pretty outstanding. Your target audience. If you had to say, this is the perfect person for this program, it's not going to be someone who's destined to become a brain surgeon, right? I presume, but there's just an absolute gigantic moat in between, super high performing doctor, attorney, that kind of mode, versus the rest of us, right?
Yeah, the average young adult who would consider themselves entrepreneurial is always a good fit, especially if they already like to work, they have some early work experience, and they know, like, hey, college just seems impractical. Like, I want to go get started now. Those are sort of the intangibles. If I could give you the absolute perfect, like, I want to talk to every single person in the United States that fits these criteria. I was homeschooled. I have 2+ years of work experience at Chick-fil-A. Someone I know in my family or a close friend group is an entrepreneur, and I've kind of had that model. Like, those, obviously, they're much wider pool of people who are successful in the program. But our program is very self-directed in the approach. So sort of that homeschool learning style maps really well to the experience. But most of our young adults coming out of the program, or most of our applicants and apprentices, they're usually 17 to 25. So really kind of people who are in that first phase of their professional life or adult life, who are trying to figure out what's the best way to start strong.
Fantastic. And Lacey's asking, what ages is your program for? I mean, you sort of said 17 to 25, as early as and as late as.
Yeah, that's sort of the sweet spot. So for those on the younger end, usually it's, I'm either finishing up the spring semester of my senior year. I'm going to turn 18 by the time I enter the job market. That to, people in their mid-20s. We've worked with people outside of that too, but, we're very focused at sort of that first chapter, that first leg of the journey, going and starting your career strong. So entry-level work, that's what sort of naturally attracts those people that are, earlier on.
Fantastic. And then, you talked a little bit about your personal side, and I love that chart. I thought it was awesome. What would you say was your turning point?
Yeah, so, critical moment for me, I was in my mid-20s. I was out of college. I originally thought I was going to be, go to medical school, and I had worked at a startup, which was awesome. That opened my eyes, and I knew, like, I want to work in business. I don't know what that means. I don't know how to start a business. I don't know what. So everybody at that point in my life was like, you need to go back to law school, get an MBA. I kind of scratched my head at that, but I was like, this is the best target I have to aim at now. So I was working towards that. I was, doing bunch of different jobs, saving up for law school. And that's actually when I met Isaac Morehouse, who's the founder of Praxis. We hit it off immediately. I went and apprenticed the CEO of an early stage company right around that time through an introduction he made. And I went and, I was the right hand of the CEO of a very early stage startup as it went from a handful of employees to several hundred. I got that the truest sense of an apprenticeship, where instead of going to law school and getting an MBA, I got to go in and and get paid to do that exact thing. And, 3.5 years later, as I left that company and went and did my own thing, I looked around, and so many of my peers they were finishing up law school. They were several $100,000 in student debt. They were starting at the bottom of the ladder. And I was like, I feel like I am like well into my career now. And I got to avoid that student debt. I got this sort of, I felt like I had a cheat code, and that sort of opened my eyes. I made a lot of mistakes, as you can see on the chart, like back and forth. And it became a very personal mission for me to like go help other people who were trying to figure that out in their own journeys.
Wow, that's fantastic. And each one of those little bounces around gave you a different set of skills and a different sense of appreciation. I feel like there's nothing better than someone who's been through the fires and trials and tribulations, because you become resilient. You learn a lot of different things. Does that sound right?
No doubt. No doubt. I feel like I lived many lives before I was 30. So.
Oh, fantastic. Well, listen, unless there's any other questions, and of course, Lacey says mentors are so powerful for success in life. Unless there's any other questions here, we are already a couple of minutes over. There is some time here to continue the conversation, as the next one doesn't begin until what is it? 8:45.
Got some time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Happy to address any other questions.
Fantastic. Yeah. I just, as a personal story, my daughter got accepted to major Florida university here, and we got some scholarships. And the coolest thing for me about this was, and I know this is not promoting necessarily the college model, but it's right for her, right? It's really the personal decision for sure. And see, Lacey, go Gators. I love it. But, her SAT and her GPA, if you sort of lined it up, wasn't where all of these other students necessarily were, but they had something called the Innovation Academy. And when we talked about her essay, she started working before the age of 16. I'm thinking of some of the things you really hammered home here. And I encouraged her to get one in a restaurant, because I think that is an amazing microcosm for life.
Absolutely.
It's so hard. There's so many things. The deadlines are so short, and you just got to fight for everything. And you're always going to have someone who's not happy with it. And how do you do it? How do you deal with it? How do you solve the problems for them? And I think the fact that she focused on what work meant for her, which is not something you hear a lot. I feel like a lot of people, as you said earlier, they play the game. They stack their resume with all these things that are about, sort of mile wide, 1 inch deep, and they don't have any appreciable skills by the time they graduate, which is just, to me, that's a failing of what society has said, like, this, you just have to be really marketable on paper. It doesn't matter if you have anything behind it.
Yeah. Well, I think, this is why early career experience or early work experiences are so transformative is, especially for the young adult in traditional public school, compulsory schooling, is you spend all day in a class asking the question, when am I going to need to know this? Contrasted with you're on a job. And I love waiting tables as an early career experience too, because you're literally running your own business. Like, your pay is determined on how effectively you run your business, from greeting customers to making them feel great to, there's every component of a successful business. There's customer satisfaction, there's marketing, there's sales, there's actual like execution, operations, and to some degree there's finance. You're running these calculations on like, how well am I doing? But that's a wildly different learning experience than sitting in a classroom and wondering like, is this useful or not, than being in a situation where the feedback loop between, hey, what if I tried this instead? Will it result in more tips? Will my customers be happy? Will I have more fun? Like, having that sort of early career experience. Chick-fil-A, yeah, she said it in the notes. Like, seriously, Chick-fil-A has one of the best training programs of any the type of job that is typically accessible to young adults. Chick-fil-A is great. Panera Bread has been great. Apple Store, typically a little bit older, a little bit more experience required to go work at tech support at Apple's store. But those are some off the cuff that, like, every young adult that I talk to that has experience from those three, I'm just head and shoulders above in terms of the context they have for how to be valuable, typically the attitude they have about work. So they do a great job recruiting, all three of those.
Yeah, I completely agree. And, I noticed a change in my daughter between when she started working and before that. Instead of looking at the left side of the menu, she looks at the right
Yeah,
side of the menu first. And she goes,
yeah,
Dad, this is kind of expensive, kind of thing.
yeah,
And because she finally has a sense of the dollar, she'll call me from the restaurant and say, Hey, what's for dinner tonight? Because she's really asking, I get 50% off on the meal here at
yeah,
the job. And
yeah.
I'm kind of debating. So she's economizing, right? She's doing the things that a full-fledged responsible adult would be doing. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. If you're ever worried about the kids coming home from college, you'll know when they're out of clean clothes. They'll want to come home and do laundry at the house so they don't have to pay for laundry, and probably been too long in between good meals. So
Yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, this has been a fantastic session. Truly appreciate your
you
time,
bet.
Mitchell, and thank you for telling us all about Praxis. And to everyone in the room, we trust you enjoyed this session with Mitchell. Check out Praxis when you get a chance and tell other people about it. It's a fantastic program, and there's a lot more students and young adults who really need this. It's a much faster on ramp to the professional realm. And again, there's so much more to come. If you missed any of these portions, just know the recordings are available for you to come back to over and over again. And if you wouldn't mind, just fill out the poll on the right before you exit to the next presentation. And thank you for attending. Mitchell, thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks, Chris. Thanks everybody for your attention, and have a great evening.
You too. Take care.